How is this happening?
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at 10 games that could have been solid at the least, had it not been for some truly uninspired, messy, and mundane stories. Before we begin, we publish new videos all week long, so be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos. Fallout 4.
War. War never changes.
Fallout 4 is not some truly horrendous mess like so many folks love to make it out to be. Gunplay is great, base building can be ignored if you truly hate it, and there are some interesting landmarks to explore in the Commonwealth. If there is one thing we can all agree on, it's that the story is really uninteresting. Sure, the overall exploration between human life and the synths is a bit thought-provoking in some ways, but the search for your missing son feels like a rehash of Fallout 3's story just in reverse. It certainly felt out of place in a game set in a historic city like Boston, Massachusetts, one of the oldest landmarks in America. We have a feeling there was a much more interesting story for the player that could have been used here instead of father looks for missing son. Let the milk cartons take care of that side story.
They've all been notified of your arrival, of course. Meet them, and then we'll discuss what comes next.
Bionic Commando.
It is not by chance that you've survived this long in Ascension City.
Back then, a bunch of us were dunking on this reboot for its ridiculous plot twist, and some of us still do today. Come on, you cannot tell us my girlfriend is actually my robot arm isn't a stupid idea. And it's a real shame that that whole thing is so ridiculous that it single-handedly tarnishes Bionic Commando. This game is actually pretty fun. Not only does the game lean into its inspiration of cheesy action movies, but the arm swinging feels insanely good to control. If only it just didn't pull the rug out from under us with the whole my arm is my girlfriend nonsense. Then maybe some folks would give Bionic Commando just a little more respect.
Good thing I'm not afraid of heights.
Indivisible.
I know, I wouldn't really skip training, but it's so early. I can learn just as well in the afternoon, can't I?
Considering the impressive artwork and animation on display with Skullgirls, Indivisible looked to be the big break Lab Zero games had been pushing towards. It was an ambitious RPG with its integration of fighting game mechanics in 2D platforming exploration. Thing is that RPGs are heavy on the story, and Indivisible has a story that just doesn't know how to breathe or even be in the moment. Characters are constantly quipping and bullying the bad guy without any real relationships being formed, and a lot of the wisecracks happen less than a minute after horrifying borderline traumatic events. These events could have given Indivisible's cast some much needed weight, but sure, let's just pick on Ravanavar for the 100th time because it's apparently really funny.
But there's only one of you. Oh, well, the guy who murdered my father is living in my head right now. It's kind of a complicated situation.
Metroid Other M.
Data recording.
In terms of gameplay, Team Ninja had some really cool ideas implemented into Other M, from the way the camera moves in certain environments to simply making Samus a badass in combat. Unfortunately, for every epic moment we got for her, there were so many moments that made her an utter joke of a bounty hunter. Samus is supposed to be a lone wolf, a super soldier that doesn't need to take orders from some dude and knows how to make the right decisions on the fly. Since when did she give a crap about following orders from someone who isn't her? It wound up making her character incredibly vanilla, and it's why so many Metroid fans hold intense disdain for Other M, despite its strengths in other areas.
I'll save the next shot for you. Not that you'll need it.
Hey! Come over here!
Bayonetta 3.
You'll pay dearly for what you've done!
Bayonetta 3, the sequel we had long been anticipating, only for it to come and go like a fart in the wind. We already knew the game was going to have solid combat, that's just the bare minimum for Platinum games. As for the story, well, just like Indivisible, Bayonetta 3 suffers from major inconsistent changes in tone. We want to be edgy and wacky, but we also want to be dark and serious, but now it's time to be edgy and wacky again. It's such a roller coaster of emotion that gets flat out tiring to endure. And considering Platinum already had 2 games to finally figure out its direction, it's now more frustrating than tiring. Don't even get us started on Viola.
I'm not much for waiting patiently. And I suppose that girl isn't either.
Star Wars Battlefront II. One might be a bit irked by us putting a game that is primarily multiplayer on this list. However, given the amount of attention EA gave Battlefront 2's campaign during marketing, no. This game absolutely deserves to be on here. Battlefront 2 was supposed to give us a campaign where we get an in-depth look into the life of the bad guys, specifically an Imperial officer named Iden Versio, who helps the Empire lay waste to rebel scum and traitors. But roughly midway into the campaign, she suddenly defects to the rebels after carrying out an order that harmed her home planet. This prideful and patriotic side of Iden is never shown or even remotely hinted at in the story early on. It just winds up making her sudden betrayal feel like a cop-out from telling a good villain story. Just another blemish on Battlefront's already broken out face.
I'm in position. Understood, Commander.
Borderlands 3.
Well, I've taken your powers. Might as well finish you off.
Gearbox has had quite a bit of trouble making Borderlands one of the best looter shooters with great storytelling, and the problems all started with Borderlands 3. While the game did have solid gunplay, the characters were just absolutely insufferable. The way they talk, the lingo they use, the way they tend to keep talking and over-explain everything until a small peep of a joke magically comes out of their mouths, none of it comes close to the humor and the wit that Borderlands, its sequel, or even pre-sequel boasted. What's more infuriating is how new Tales from the Borderlands and Tiny Tina's Wonderlands continued this approach to its comedy and writing, and both were just as awful. Yeah, there's not much hope for Borderlands 4.
I want you to hate me. I'm talking true loathing, like an absolute rage smoldering within, hollowing you out like a house fire.
Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite.
It is the only way.
Yeah, well, I want it on record that this is a bad idea.
MVCI already had quite a number of problems. The 2v2 format was a weird departure from the standard 3v3 that the series had become known for. And the visuals, well, even ugly games can turn out fun, right? Especially since MVC was getting an actual story mode for the first time ever. Despite all the time and energy Capcom put into Infinite, it turned out to be a huge waste of everybody's time. Infinite's story is a total mess in how it doesn't explain anything that's going on. Ultron and Sigma have already merged and now they're invading all of the merged locations, but we also need to stop Jedha from creating a new version of Venom that would destroy cities. But we also need to free Thanos just so he can tell us where to find the Infinity Stones while keeping an eye on him because Thanos is a big ol' meanie. You're thrown around with meaningless plots and details so frequently that by the time you beat Ultron Omega, you'll have no memory of anything that happened beforehand.
So what do we do now?
We rebuild.
Immortals of Avium.
The bold and terrible tyrant of Reshan. They called him their ruler, as he was of east and west, and the horns of their ancestors trumpeted blood.
There were two big complaints that plagued Immortals of Avium at launch. The first one was about the technical instability. The second one was regarding its story. Look, we aren't going to trash it and say, oh, it's the worst thing ever, duh. It isn't perfect, but it isn't dreadful, okay? It's serviceable. Even so, we have to admit there are some groan-inducing moments that make Immortals of Avium's story really hard to stomach. It pulls the same nonsense you'd expect from what one would describe as MCU writing. The amazement of their own powers doing cool stuff, the bad guy standing behind the good guy while the good guy's talking crap about him, you get the idea. We're willing to say that Immortals was merely a victim of circumstance considering how saturated entertainment has gotten with this kind of writing. Regardless, that caveat isn't going to fly with most players, and it didn't.
You help us win this. I'll know you're ready.
Forspoken.
Damn, that is a serious draft.
Forspoken really did not get any credit it might have deserved. The combat may be enough for some to stick with the game, but unfortunately, Forspoken faced the same problems as Bayonetta 3, Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, and Immortals of Avium. Conflicting tones that don't match up with the situation at hand and change on the fly. Plot points that fail to build upon anything that's been established beforehand and expect you to just accept things are happening. And worst of all, the writing.
Better than nothing, I suppose.
I'll be the judge of that.
It was so bad that co-writer Gary Whitta would state how the game turned out to be nothing like what he wrote. We can only imagine what little of Amy Hennig's vision made it into the final build of the game. That said, it is really, really hard to speak positively about Forspoken when the story turned out this bad. The game is fun, I swear, but man, that story, it just,
I just move shit with my mind.
Perhaps our connection has somehow awoken some abilities.
I just moved shit with my mind.
I just keep hearing I.
I just move shit with my freaking mind!
Anyways, was there a game where the story might have killed your interest for the rest of the game? Let us know down in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to MojoPlays for more great videos every day.